Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for welcome. Enjoy for joining us for our Clearwater Jazz Holiday Foundation's Young Lions Jazz Master Virtual Session. I know you are super excited about today's session. I'm your host, Michael Kernodle, and we have none other than the great Dr. Pete Carney. And his topic today is jazz band arranging for jazz directors and advanced students, part 2. That's right. This is part 2. So if you missed part 1, you definitely need to go into our archives. You need to check that out because you do not want to miss this great information that Dr. Carney is going to share with us today. But before we start, I want to remind you, if you're joining us live, and we love your interaction with us, I want you to go down there in that chat feature and just type out your question. And we're going to leave some time at the end for any comments, questions you may have for our awesome instructors. I want to remind you that this wouldn't be possible without our awesome sponsors that we have. So please be sure to check out the studio archives of past video sessions at clearwaterjazz.com's education and outreach section. And that's brought to you by Blue Water Wealth Management at Stewart Partners and Duke Energy, as well as our Young Lions podcast available wherever you stream. And that's brought to you by our friends at Marine Max Clearwater. And all you have to do is just search Young Lions Jazz Master Virtual Sessions wherever you stream. Where do I start? Dr. Carney has given us so many great sessions. You see how excited he is to jump in here. You need to check out maybe the one he did on Safer at Home, Advanced Improvisations with Simple Tech. And that was part 1 through 3. I think he likes doing series over here. He also did a series on acid jazz and chili hop music production techniques and building a good solo. I can't think of anybody that don't need to build a good solo these days. And if you don't know who Dr. Carney is, he is the Director of Jazz Studies at State College of Florida in Bradenton. You've probably seen him on stages all over the country, here in Tampa Bay, Sarasota. The man is out there. He's not only teaching, but he's also doing exactly what he's going to on the stage, what he's going to talk to us about today. So, also, if you didn't know, he has a music textbook called Interactive Listening, which was chosen by Apple as the editor's choice. That is huge. He's the headline saxophonist is Jazz Studies, including the festivals in Rochester Jazz Festival. I'm talking Aberdeen Festival in Scotland with acid groups, Orange Alert. I think I should go check that out. That sounds like it was a great performance. So without any further delay, I think I've told you enough about Dr. Carney, and you're here to hear about some jazz arranging. So Dr. Carney, the stage is all yours.
Thanks, Michael. It's great to be back. I love doing these workshops with you guys and getting some information out there. I think when you're younger, you want to create stuff. And then when you're older, you want to hand off that information for other people to do more stuff. And today I wanted to hand off some information of different techniques to try out for arranging and writing music. We just did this show at the Palladium. It was basically a gigantic Radiohead show that I wrote. And it was based off of this recording session we did with St. Louis Symphony. And I wanted to kind of walk you through some of it for younger arrangers or older, however you want to label yourself. Just some, in the first episode, we did some basic arranging techniques. And in this one, I wanted to go through some of the maybe tips and tricks that could help you get your score together, and how things that really do work for writing for any level. But these techniques might take a little more time to put on paper, I guess, or to transcribe into a big band chart or whatever ensemble it is. In this case, what we're going to look at today is a score that I did for musicians from St. Louis Symphony. We did this collaboration with the St. Louis Jazz Foundation, and I flew up and we did this recording session. So it was all in one day. And to be honest, every we only rehearsed the songs once and then recorded it. So it's super intimidating. I had to have every note in the right place. Everything would be just played through one time, and then we turned on the video camera and recorded it. So it was a learning experience for me, of course. Very high wire situation where you don't want to show up without having all your ducks in a row. And that's sort of the big takeaway here today is whenever you're putting your pencil on paper and you're writing for musicians, write for them to be successful immediately. You know, you want to give them the most instruction possible for how you want it to be played. I would say to some extent now, I try to write articulations on almost any note if I can. You know, why not put an accent in the phrase where you know it needs to be? And if you're not sure, sing your stuff before you finish it. You know, sing, if you sing through the background riffs, da ba doo da 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 ba doo da da. Any of those accents that I sing would tell me where they go. I feel like when you're younger and you're writing, you second guess yourself a little bit. And then as I've gotten older, I think almost everything has an articulation on it. Compared to when I first started writing, I'm trying to be much more specific than I used to be. So I wanted to walk you through this score because it was a challenging project. Let me see if I can pull the score up here first. Yeah, so what was challenging about this was the instrumentation. We had strings that you'll see here in the middle. And we had 4 horns in the top: trumpet, tenor, baritone, trombone. And then 4 strings: jazz guitar, piano, bass, and then drums. I would say, first of all, this layout is a good concept of put your drums in the bottom, bass, piano, strings are in the middle, trumpet, for me was on top, tenor, baritone, and then trombone. So that I would say use that format pretty consistently of score order. And then if you're also doing a MIDI project before that, or if you're being creative, why not use that same format consistently so that when you go to print, or if there's a mistake, you know exactly where to find it. I use pretty much either jazz band score order or orchestra score order, which usually puts the strings in the middle. It helps you keep an eye on your stuff. All right. The other thing is, let's just talk about some of the rules of thumb. I would say I've learned this, especially in the last project for the St. Pete Jazz Festival, which is that most of your musicians should be reading their music right in the middle of their staff. It sounds ridiculous and like simple, but you want to keep people in the general ballpark of where the staff is created for them to read off of ledger lines, okay? So if you think about it, like most of the meat of their playing should be in that neighborhood. For example, recently I wrote this, violin line, and I had it up in the stratosphere by himself, and it just didn't sound good because it was a much smaller range of the instrument, or it just didn't have the same guts that it had down. I put the melody back down the octave right in the middle of the violin, and it sounded incredible. All of a sudden, the group sounded better because I was writing for the sort of standard range of the instrument. All right, you can see like the trumpet here is right in the middle of the trumpet range, tenor's right in the middle, baritone's in the middle, trombone's a little high. But that was for this moment to kind of keep the horns together. Okay, so the other thing I would say in this project, we were recording the song Paranoid Android by Radiohead. And the song is basically 3 different sections. It's 3 miniature songs glued together into one song. So, and we're only going to rehearse it for 5 minutes before we record it. Like literally, and that's what happened. We played through it one time, made a few changes, and then recorded it. That was it. In that like 5-hour session, we had to get through 6 songs. And so each of those was one rehearsal for 5 minutes and then one performance. And that's pretty much what you're going to get. So the other way you can help people be successful is to not leave them on an island doing weird stuff by themselves. All right. If you look at the strings, they're almost always going to be together. The horns are broken up, but they're in tandem. They're still working together. Because I knew we were doing this the one time through, I doubled the piano part with the bass, and the drum is playing the same rhythm here on the toms, and then he crashes with them together. A lot of times people forget to do the drum part or wait till the end and write a bad drum part. Super important that you give the drummer something solid to do that matches what the rest of the group is doing. It puts them in a situation to be successful quickly. Like, gone are the days of like rehearsing things and then like the drummer kind of figuring out what's going on. I would say most professional situations, the drummer has some kind of part that it doesn't have to be too detailed. This isn't I wouldn't say this is very detailed, but he's kind of going for the toms, and then he's got some cymbals up here, and I wrote in a little, fill, but even still, this part wouldn't necessarily be necessary. He did play it. He plays the heck out of it, which you'll hear. But it's not overly written either. You don't want to give the drummer like every single note that like they play. You want to give them the concept of what's happening so that they can be free to play their instrument in an open way, rather than trying to duplicate some overly specific stuff that you wrote. Another couple little clues here. I gave the bass player the bass line with the piano, but I gave both of them the chord symbols. Why not give them the chord symbols? A lot of times people will just write the notes they want and then not give them the symbols. Well, you're taking away their brain power when you do that. They might know a better way to play what you're looking for. It helps them spot mistakes. And let's say they've played it 40 times your way and now they want to embellish it. They have the information to take that part just a little bit farther down the road. So I would always encourage you to give everybody the chord symbols if you want them to know what's going on around them in terms of the rhythm section. You don't want to put the chord symbols up here in the horn parts. A lot of times people do that too. That's a mistake also, because you're giving the horn players information they don't want at that point. Right here, I could have, like in the second bar here, I have the guitar player. I give him the solo fills here, and I wrote rests here. If I had given him like a bass cue or the piano thing, he would play that and then solo, right? But I wanted it to be clear to him not to play here and to play in the fills. If I gave him, I could have given him both roles of playing this little bass line, ba-ba-da-bum-bum, and told him to fill. But the problem is that you're asking him to do 2 different jobs. So one of those is going to come out not as well as the other, right? So because I had guitar and piano, we sort of divide and conquer. The violins here are playing a pretty tight harmony. They got G and the E flat, and the same thing in the viola and the cello. So this G, E flat, and then E flat to C in the top 2 violins is like a little tight harmony in thirds. And instead of trying to do the full chord, I'm actually giving them the same thing down the octave so that it's thicker. You can over voice things in the string parts or the horns instead of doubling things. So it's something worth checking out. If you've got a nice harmony in thirds, why not strengthen it instead of trying to fill out everything with a chord? Because it does get it can get too dense if you're just hitting people with constant chords. you're taking up all the sort of sonic energy all the time. Okay. A cool little method here of bell tones in the horns. We're going to check this out in a second and actually listen to it. I just wanted to talk about a couple things here in the opening. Bell tones, where I played this on the piano, and I wanted this thing where it's like ba ba doo bing, be ba doo dee, da ba doo dee, where it would play 4 different notes. And what people will often do is just write those 4 notes and give it to the horn player. Let me see if I can play it on the piano so you kind of know what I'm talking about. That kind of thing. That kind of sound. Instead of writing each note for a different horn, asking them to play a rhythm that's broken up, start everybody with the first note, then start breaking people off into the other notes. It does take this thing right here does take a long time to work out. When I say a long time, maybe 5 minutes or so. But when you start adding up 5 minutes each time, it does become, it can be a lot, but the effect is totally worth it. It takes an extra minute or two, compared to just giving people a bell tone. Give everybody the first bell tone and then give 3 of the people, or give the one person stays on that bell tone, and then the other 3 instruments begin to follow those 4 notes, if that makes sense. All right, so instead of it being broken, it's thick from the beginning and it's spreading out. And you could hear this in movies like The Matrix, and you can also hear it in Maria Schneider a lot. Instead of dividing the bell tones to individual notes, just kind of get everybody playing the first note, and then 3 people on the second note, 2 people on the third note, and then only one person plays that last note by themselves. You can see that's the tenor here. He's the last one to move, but he's following the line all the way through. It also puts the saxophone playing everything, right? Which the saxophone has the most sort of quick agility. They'll read the music the soonest in the rehearsal. It gives the brass the easier part, and it gives you that bell tone effect. So let's check that out, because I think it's really worth experimenting with as a writer. You kind of hear all of that in motion here. Oh, I forgot one more thing to tell you here. When we rehearsed it, I had all these bell tones here, and as we rehearsed it, I have this big repeat. So it goes all the way up to like 8 bars and then repeats. And I was like, well, it's too much too soon. The horns were on top of everything from the beginning. Let's just have the bell tones on the repeat. So we'll hear the string part here, and then we'll hear the horns on the repeat when it comes back. Our fills. Here comes the top. Next bell tone over here. Change it up here. Right. It's a little bit hard to hear in the mix, but you kind of get the basic idea. Like on this one, again, think about these groups functioning as teams, and you don't really want to break up a team without a good reason, especially if you've only have limited rehearsal time, which you should always plan on. You should plan that. I don't think you should write music for people to rehearse for a whole semester. and assume that it's going to go well because you have intricate details. I guess it's sort of personal, but I'm more a fan of, I want people to play this stuff quickly so that they can spend more time getting better at it and feeling confident about it, rather than trying to get just to the finish line to be able to play it. Because if they're rehearsing all the way up to the concert, they're not refining it and making it better than what you wrote. Again, so the strings are always together. They always know that they're basically working as a team, and they can pick that up in a chart pretty well from the beginning. The rhythm section is mostly together here. The only person filling is the guitar fills. And then here at the end, the horns are staggering. They start together. So important. Then I could have deleted this trumpet note, right, and had him play like the second, third, or fourth note, but that wouldn't give you the rhythmic train to get on. It's much easier to go da ba da dee da together rather than 1, 2, 3, 4. And you've probably experienced this in rehearsal when you have a staggered pyramid in a concert band or jazz band piece where it's broken and somebody has to come in on the 16th note right after beat 1 here. You're really putting a lot of pressure on the performer. I still can't do it. So I don't know. I would say, be careful with staggered entrances when it's much cooler effect to have everybody start together and break off into harmony. You get a stronger sound out of your group. Let's listen to that one more time. Let's touch. The pyramid. Cool. Pause it 1 second. This only works because you have teams of people that are orchestrated together. The piano player for that whole 30 seconds is with the bass, and they've rehearsed it once, and now by the time you hit record, they're pretty familiar with that. Even younger groups, super important that you don't leave people by themselves. Put your musicians with each other so that people can have more fun, enjoy what they're doing. The drum rhythm of this is going to be the same through the whole section. He's with the bass and the piano, but he has room to fill because he knows that they have his back also. He can't play good fills. If I change the rhythm of this to a variation, let's say I wrote the ba ba da bum bum, ba ba da bum bum, ba ba da bum bum. If I change that into ba ba da bum bum, ba da ba da ba da dum, ba 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 da ba da. I could have written some cooler stuff, all right, but then I'm stealing the energy of people's brain to be creative, and the fact that I changed the chord but not the rhythm sets up a stability for the drummer to fill in the space creatively. The strings know pretty quickly over here that even though they're far away from the horns, they know that they're playing together no matter what. And the horn players know that this pyramid thing, it all starts together and it spreads out. So they're not in a situation where they have to look for each other or second guess themselves. Every time they start, they all have the first note, if that makes sense. And the guitar player is free because he knows that he just has to play in the break of the hits that the rhythm section is continuously playing together. All right. One little change in all that scenario would have made this much harder, right? If I had changed the rhythm of anything, or you go beyond the predictability level of people. You want people to be able to predict when to play to be successful. It's already hard enough at having 16th notes in it, to be honest with you. I'm not writing 5/4. I'm not writing 3/8 or anything. I'm trying to actually kill any of that stuff in my creative spirit to keep it playable quickly. All right. Let's keep going with this track and we'll go back to the score. We'll just talk about this is a new section. This is like sort of the second intro of the song. So the strings are still together, but the cello has broken off, and now the cello is doubling the bass. If you're going to have a string quartet and join a sort of jazz orchestra, it's nice to throw the cello over with the bass, because that's also how it generally functions in your traditional orchestra. The cello and the bass can have a nice octave, but I'm going to keep the three strings together. They're not going to be separated rhythmically. They might have harmony notes, but the other danger here is writing too much harmony. To be honest with you, because these strings are mic'd but not amplified, generally speaking, I was leaning much more towards unisons and maybe a third harmony, but not full chords. You want them to be able to cut through the ensemble in like a natural way, whether you have microphones or not. Okay, so that's just an important thing, is don't overwrite your string parts. Try and think about them as unison or harmony, but not in this type of ensemble. They have to sonically compete with horns that are trying to play really soft, to be honest with you, just to balance it out in a natural way. Again, I gave if we look at the score here, let's move ahead in the score a little bit. Look, I gave a couple important things here. I gave the bass player the starting rhythm, and then gave him space to fill it in. Real important, because if I had written, I wanted him to know what the concept was, but I do not want to write more stuff in here, to be honest, because he will then start freaking out. If I wrote this rhythm and every variation that I wanted, I'm going to kill his instinct as a musician. I gave him the basic concept, and then these slash chords are your friend in jazz writing. I gave him the concept here again, and then this part was easy enough that I wanted him to play, but he's going to play this, and then he's going to change the B flat, and he's going to play something like it with this F chord, and he's going to play something like it again here with the A in the bass. It's easier for him to figure out the best note choice in this arpeggio, rather than writing 4 arpeggios. At this point, I needed him to play this because it's on the album. And this was easy enough to write out, but you have to make these decisions, and you're trying to sort of not write sometimes for people because you'll freak them out. You know, for example, like right here, I could give the jazz guitar player chords, but you're going to get a better performance if from an advanced jazz guitar player. He's going to pick out better voicings than I am, than me writing out the guitar voicings. If this was a younger group, I would have to, if I was trying to publish a younger jazz chart, I would probably need to get some specific guitar voicings. For the piano, if this was a younger chart, I would have to give the piano some basic voicings to play in here. What else is in here that we're saying? Oh, I gave the drummer the basic rhythm for 2 bars and then hit repeat. Do not write this rhythm and then just duplicate it all the way through the chart. It makes it a horrible reading experience for a good drummer or even a younger drummer. You don't want to, they would rather read repeat signs than read this rhythm consistently written all the way through the chart. You're just wasting people's brain power. Okay, what else we got in here? Horns are laying out. Strings are all together. Da, da, ba, 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 ba. The guitar is in unison with the strings. I've got the violin up here in the higher octave, doubled with violin 2. The cello breaks off from this party and comes over here. Viola goes with the cello and with the bass. So you've got 3 people doing the same thing. 3 people, guitar, violin 2 and violin 1, all playing together in unison or octaves. And the only other part that's happening is also in unison. Again, you could, if I was trying to be clever, if it's E half diminished chord, it's really tempting to write the whole chord here. Oh, look, I could have put the cello on the G and I could put the viola on the B flat. It doesn't mean it's going to sound better. It means it's going to sound like a chord. Okay. And I felt like these 2 melody parts, the upper part and the lower part, were more important than trying to voice it out into a chord. And if I write something in harmony, you're sending the players away from each other to go find notes. Okay. And you have to decide, is that important enough to risk the texture? And I didn't want to risk it. I didn't think it would make it better to actually hear the full chord. It would be better for him to hear this big unison E, especially because we're talking about strings, which are, soft compared to horn players. If this E half diminished chord was sitting in front of me and I wanted to use the horns here, I would definitely write the whole chord out, because that's what horns do. They read stuff really quickly and they give you harmony and power, but that's not what this moment is meant for. Let's talk about what's coming up next in the chart. Horns are going to play the melody. The melody here, the trumpet has the lead. Tenor is just voiced straight down below it. Baritone below that, and then trombone below that. You can put the baritone below the trombone if you want. Also, I was just hearing this chart with the 2 saxophones in the middle, and the brass as the bookends, the top and the bottom. This is not a complex harmony. This is the exact melody that Tom York sings, and I just put that in the trumpet part. I didn't get cute with anything in this scenario. The harmony is just going to come straight down. It's going to stay pretty close. I really like writing a tight harmony for 4 horns, because it gives you a full big band sound if they're all together. You get that sort of ensemble sound. So in this case, we have C minor chord. So I've got the C in the melody, G below it. That's my next chord tone. And then I got F here in the baritone sax, and then E flat below that. So from the bottom up, again, the bass, if you think about the bass being your sort of fifth horn player, the bass is playing the C down here. I don't really want to give that to the horns. It's not necessary. And I'm starting my chord E flat. F is like the magic note you can use in a minor chord that doesn't change the chord quality. I don't know why that is, but let's say if I wrote a D in here, it would sound like C minor 9 instead of sounding like a C minor chord. It's important because I feel like a lot of times jazz arrangers accidentally turn things into a jazz chart that's trying to be a pop chart. So if you're trying to be a pop chart, don't turn this C minor into C minor 7, or don't turn this C minor into C minor 9. Don't turn this chord into C minor major 7, because you're changing the chemistry of what is good about pop music, and you're making it into bad jazz. It's somewhat opinionated, I guess, but like there are functional rules of pop music, and one of them is that if it's a minor chord, you can add the fourth and it doesn't change the chemistry of the chord and it sounds pretty solid. In major, you can add the second note of the scale and it doesn't sound like you're trying to make it into a jazz chart. I think it's important to decide what you're trying to do so that you have a rule system and stay on one side of the fence or the other. Let's give this a listen. And this melody is going to go straight up like he sings it, and the voicing is just going to stay below him. I don't think you have to overthink it. You're just like, the lead line is going up and I'm trying to just stay in a logical sequence that follows the chord progression, and just you want to stay away from the melody a little bit. Like because this melody is so low, I have to get down to the G, and you don't want to have a B flat next to that melody because it'll sound like it'll just disrupt the melody in a sense. Like it doesn't sound like a melody, it sounds like a harmony. You need at least a third away from your melody to create the lead sense of that melody being present. Otherwise, it sounds like a cluster. The melody starts to go up, and so the tenor part can kind of creep up with it, but not get closer than a third. You can see that everybody else just kind of goes up through your scale in a way that it sounds like they're all moving together in parallel motion, or it's very continuous sounding. Let's check that out. Back it up a little bit. Coming up here in a second. So somewhere over. Sorry, I'm not sure here. There it is. It'll be coming up in a second here. The harmony away from the horn, or away from the melody. A little bit thicker now. And jumps back to the solo. I'm going to pull that up. Behind the solo. Simple background, unison, both thirds. Chords are just really beautiful to play over, so you have to do anything with it. It's just a great production. The thing is, like the repetition of this, everybody's settling, you know, like the band isn't overthinking it, I guess, at this point. Because the solo is over the same chords as the verse, even though the song is complicated, you're putting people in a situation where they're having fun, me especially, but they're not in the situation of like all of a sudden doing something totally different on the next 8 bars or whatever. You're building some momentum on the same section. You can tell like musicians are having fun because they're moving. If people, the cello player is moving, and from the very beginning of the track, like you can see people kind of physically into it. When people, you don't want to have jazz musicians terrified of trying to read 7/8 plus 15 over 12 and in front of a video camera. People are going to get stressed out, and somebody's going to pop a fuse. You know what I mean? All kinds of reactions happen when you put musicians under pressure that is public. You know, you don't want to put people under public pressure, and we knew this was going to be videotaped, so you can't write the most amazing thing ever. You have to write things that go through the system pretty quickly. It's just 4-part harmony in the horns. The trumpet's at least a third away from everybody else, and just kind of go down your chord neighborhood. You don't have to overthink it, and you don't have to write passing chords. You just have to frame the melody. You know, frame the melody and let the performer enjoy playing the melody without too much complicated stuff happening. The harmony part knows where to. They know how to accompany the melody because they're with the melody the whole time, in a sense. Right, I had a little, like, this is one of my favorite parts. I took a chance here, personally. The strings go to sol ponticello. They've already played this lick. Ba, da, da, da. So the 4th time they play it, you write a tremolo or trill above it, and then write sol ponticello, and they go to this sort of icy sound of the on the strings closer to the bridge. Let me back up a little bit. Another part, so everybody's together here in harmony, just like Tootie, for write the four voices in the strings or the brass, and then just flip it over to the other group. That keep it simple. Write four notes on top of each other, and in a tight chord, and then give it to the other four people, and then start featuring your people. Like this is just a great moment to feature different people. Like in the first part of the song, we feature the guitar. In the middle part, we featured myself. And the third part, we're going to feature the trombone player. And the arrangement is set up to just to feature the performers you're working with. For jazz writing, compared to orchestra writing, this is a generalization, but in jazz, you try to emphasize the soloist that you have in your group. So one of the coolest things I discovered from listening to albums is setting up different sections, different soloist sections to feature the trombone player. And then the next section features the guitar, but it has a different little section to itself. You know what I mean? That's different than other arranging concepts. With the jazz orchestra or with the jazz big band, set your players up with like little background riffs or their own little solo section that's different than everybody else. So the arrangement is supposed to lift the individuals, and that's again a classic Duke Ellington technique. He wasn't just writing for this big band; he was writing for the people that sat in those chairs and featuring their talents on different songs. Back it up a little bit. He's got time to jam on these just two chords, one chord in minor and then the 5 chord. That's it. And he's totally liberated to play all kinds of cool stuff because he's not sight reading on video with a chart that has 25 chords on it. His little solo section has 2 chords and he can go to town. Like that's the kind of solo you're looking for in a pressure situation. Give me something simple where I can jam. And that's So I think I'll just leave it here, but I just wanted to, kind of close up here and say you're trying to put people in a situation where they can have fun and they're not scared of the microphone and the video and everything else that's going on is enough pressure. And it's just good rule of thumb for any recording session or any concert performances, try to almost sort of unwrite rather than overwrite. So take your yourself out of it, and think about creating scenarios where people can have fun and they can rehearse it in one time or two times and turn the video on and not be scared of what's going to happen. All of these solo sections are super short. They're very focused. I'm featuring different people at different parts of the song. Rather than featuring everybody all at one big solo section in the middle, why not feature somebody at the top, somebody in the middle, and then later on in the song we'll feature other people. So that's my suggestions. It's like thinking in teams. You got your string team, in this case, the horn team, and you got your rhythm section teams. And if you have one concept for each of those groups, you'll have a successful chart. So I hope that helps. You're always available to reach out to me at pete@interactivelistening.com. I'm glad to help with any arranging suggestions, or just, it's not really I didn't mean it to be showing you everything in my chart. It's just a way for me to express the best way to give you a real world example of keeping it simple.
Awesome, Dr. Carney. Wow. I really, really enjoyed this session, just seeing how you teamed up the instruments. And it looks like in your arrangements, you were courteous to the musicians as well.
Right.
I know sometimes, you see arrangements where you're like, oh, man, did they really think about that when they wrote that for that musician?
Yeah.
So, it's a whole different thing when it's a musician writing it, right?
Right. And writing for, use a good font for your musicians. You can pay $5 from Elbow Sound and download really incredible fonts that make a difference. And it depends, you should use the font that's appropriate for classical or jazz. Buy good paper and print it on cardstock so people appreciate it more and they feel more important. Those little things add up in every scenario. I started printing my student material on cardstock instead of cheap copy paper, and they appreciate it more. And it feels like real music, rather than just some sort of handout that came off the printer. Little things like that really add up in how people feel about your rehearsals or recordings or anything.
Yeah, especially in the digital world now where it's like, hey, right, just download it. So
you can download everything. Yeah, but just taking that extra step and buying decent paper, it really does have an effect on because they feel like you cared enough to put it on good paper, and they'll care enough to practice it.
Wow. And that makes all the world of difference, that the person cares. And speaking of caring, we hope that our listeners care enough to share these great sessions that they're experiencing. And here's the deal. All of this information is free. Can you imagine? You just received a master class of arranging for free. There's people that pay hundreds of dollars for this, but here, Clearwater Jazz Holiday Foundation's Young Lions Jazz Master Virtual Sessions, we care about those future arrangers, those future musicians, the current people, whether you're seasoned in this or you're a beginner at this. We really care, and they invest a lot to make sure this information is packaged. Just like we said, it's the little things that count. Yeah. So if you may have a future suggestion of a topic that we haven't covered, or maybe you just want to, tell us how awesome the session by Dr. Carney was, we would love to hear from you. Just email us at info@clearwaterjazz.com. We would love to hear from you, or, always go back in our past sessions at clearwaterjazz.com/education. And you could check out more and more of these type of sessions, or even this one. Maybe you want to pause it here, check it out, maybe play some things. I mean, it's very interactive. So we want to thank you again, Dr. Carney, for just helping us with this session. I know I learned a lot, and I know there's plenty of people out here that could appreciate what you just displayed for us. So I've been your host, Michael Kernodle, and this has been our awesome educator of the day, Dr. Carney. Until next time we see you guys, keep sharing and always keep it swinging. See you next time. Bye-bye.